Hello, Willowdale and beyond. Welcome to Meet Your Neighbor, NeighborLink North York's weekly interview series. Each episode, we introduce you to new neighbors in the spirit of building a more connected community. I hope you've had a great start to your week. I'm Sebastian Biasucci, and I'm very excited for you to meet our guest tonight. June is Deafblind Awareness Month, and so we wanted to introduce you to two representatives from the Canadian Helen Keller Centre, which is located right here in Willowdale. Jennifer Robbins is the executive director, and her work with CHKC and the deafblind community began in 1996. Along with her current role, Jennifer also serves on the board of the Canadian National Society of the Deafblind as treasurer, the Deafblind Network of Ontario as the vice chair, and the National Deafblind Awareness Month committee as the chair. Elio Riggillo is the consumer relations coordinator, and he uses ASL, tactile ASL, and pro-tactile communication. In addition to his work at CHKC, Elio works as an instructor for George Brown College in the Intervenor program. He has been involved in helping to educate people who are deafblind and inform other people about intervention services. His motivation was to teach his children that even though he is deafblind, he could still be an advocate, learn new skills, and help others. We're so glad that they stopped by this evening. And before we meet our two guests, allow me to introduce your host, Lily Chang.
Thank you, Sebastian, and good evening, Willowdale. I'm sure many of us have driven by this quiet building at the corner of Empress and Willowdale and wondered, what's happening inside that building? And then maybe some of you and some of us have walked by some neighbors who have some assistance crossing the street with someone. And perhaps like you, like me, you've wondered, how can I greet this neighbor? How can I say hi if they are blind and possibly deaf? So tonight is going to be a wonderful learning experience for all of us to get to know some of our neighbors who then hopefully will have more opportunities to connect with in the days to come. So without further ado, let us give a warm welcome to Jennifer and Elio, as well as Amy Lawson, who is Elio's intervener, and Monique Ledrew, who is helping us with interpretation tonight. Good evening, Elio and Jennifer. How are you tonight?
Good evening, Lily. Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
And hello, everyone. Good evening.
So many of us have driven by Empress and Willowdale and seen the Helen Keller Centre. Jennifer, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what happens in that building and why it is so important to you, because you have championed this cause and worked for this organization for many years now.
Absolutely. We actually have two buildings in the Willowdale neighborhood. So many people may have noticed our apartment building at the corner of Willowdale Avenue and Byng. And in that building, we have 16 individuals who are deafblind, and they live there independently. Within that building, we provide support services, so intervener services, for those tenants to access the community. So as you may have seen, you'd see many of our tenants out and about, in the grocery stores, in medical offices, restaurants, all kinds of places out in the Willowdale community, and they would be accessing many of those services and businesses with their interveners. Then secondly, we have a building at the corner of Willowdale and Empress Avenue, which is a training center. We offer skills training of daily living. So individuals from basically around the province can come to the training center and learn various types of skills like orientation mobility, communication skills, safe cooking skills, Braille, and those types of things.
Wow, what a special community it must be in order to be able to engage and empower a group of people who, perhaps 100 years ago would have been very much alone in the world. I think that's a wonderful thing. Can you tell us maybe a little bit, what does it mean to have an intervener? What does the role of the intervener play in the life of someone who is deaf and blind?
I think Elio might be the better person
Yeah,
to answer that question.
I think you're right.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes, so deaf-blind individuals would be accompanied by an intervener, which would help with the visual as well as communication that happens. So they're offering supports to that deaf-blind individual, whether they're lost their hearing, lost their vision, or have some degree of a hearing loss and a vision loss. So when they're accompanying with them, it allows the deaf-blind person to be independent, to be able to, experience the challenge based on the challenges that they have experienced having lost their vision. So for example, being able to see traffic. It's a very busy place out there. So having somebody around who can help support. Sometimes you'll see individuals with a cane, sometimes they'll have a guide dog. So you'll see a number of different techniques that people will use. But it allows them to go out and shopping, grocery shopping, perhaps. They perhaps can go on other outings with their intervener, even associate with their family and friends, perhaps attend a wedding or other social event. In some cases, they also go to school. So it allows them to interact with the community just like everyone else.
So, Elio, as a neighbor, if I walk by someone who is walking on the sidewalk with their intervener, what is a way that we can greet and interact? Is it simply enough to just say hello? I think for some of us, we could be intimidated, and so we'll just smile and nod and walk on by. But I think it'd be wonderful if we could muster the courage. What's the best way to approach someone from your community to strike up a conversation?
Sure. I think that if you happen to see a deafblind individual with their intervener in the community, yeah, just walk up, say, excuse me, and introduce yourself, say hello. Some deafblind individuals, like everyone else, are more personable and others are a little shyer. But the intervener will be there to help facilitate that communication between the two of you. So don't worry about that. You'll be able to access them through the intervener.
That's wonderful. I think many people in Willowdale would be curious to know what are the most friendliest places. When I say friendly, I mean easy to navigate in Willowdale in terms of your daily living, and what are the more challenging places for deaf-blind community in Willowdale?
Okay, in terms of places. I think if there's no services, if a deafblind individual doesn't have any services, that'll make things incredibly difficult and challenging in terms of not having communication access. I also assume that in the mornings, for example, going off to work, going eastbound, whenever the sun is shining really brightly, it can be really difficult to see in that direction as well. And then, in the evenings, coming home, traveling westbound. So you may run into people that way just because as they lose their sight. I myself lost my sight later in life. I didn't use a cane or anything until much later in life. At the age of 16, I started to realize that I was actually a deaf-blind individual. I lost my hearing. And it wasn't until I was about 30 years old that I became more willing to share that and accept that and started using a cane at that age. So that allowed me to be a lot more independent and to avoid barriers took down a lot of barriers for me. My wife and I'm married and have 3 children, and so my family, we're all very busy individuals. I'm a very busy guy. I also have 4 jobs, so but I keep myself pretty busy. So the deafblind, that just goes to show that deafblind people are capable of doing many things, and I would encourage people to appreciate and recognize that.
And just to add to that, Jennifer speaking, we've been in this community for 30 years, and we've definitely established some connections with some local businesses, and many businesses are with those that we've made those connections with, are very accommodating, right? Like they understand the intervener, they understand that, somebody might be coming in with a guide dog, they're patient. And, like I can think of many barbershops and nail salons and things like that have been very accommodating over the years, restaurants and coffee shops, and they get to know our consumers as well. But I think one of the main things that maybe a local business in the Willowdale area can do to be most accommodating is just to be open and friendly and understanding. Are some of the things more technically that our consumers might like would be like more well-lit areas, stores that aren't dark. If they're well-lit, then likely our individuals will come in and shop there. If they're dark, they might not be able to, it might be not very accessible for them. So things like that, small things like that, could be very accommodating for our consumers.
Is there a business, Elio or Jennifer, that you can think of that has been especially a nice landing spot or place to frequent for the community?
Personally, myself, I can think of many. The YMCA, we've had a partnership with for many, many years, and they've provided low-cost memberships to our consumers. We have certainly built relationships with the Metro, and a lot of the staff at the Metro who have been there for many, many years, because they do have a lot of staff who have been there many years, just like, they get to know our tenants who have also lived in the building for many, many years. So they're friendly and they like to say hello. And, the Metro has helped us out in some safety situations with some consumers in the past, and certainly supported us in our events with donations and things like that. So definitely have been a great partner for us. We've had events at Mel Lastman Square. We've the People's Church. Our consumers like to frequent the farmers market at both locations. So lots and lots. I could probably go on. I've been around for 30 years, so there's been some popular places in the neighborhood for sure.
Elio, did you have any you wanted to add to that?
Absolutely, I can add to that. There's some really great restaurants nearby, and the No Frills, I would say, also at Center Point Mall. A lot of us go shopping there and get our coffee and such from there as well. And Canadian Tire as well. For all of our needs, we come there, we use that, and so often we go to the mall nearby. In terms of accessibility, TTC bus, the route number 98C, does provide service in and around that area. So you'll often see a lot of individuals with interveners or without, but accessing that. So there's lots of options, near the 401 there. So it's really perfect for us. It's a sort of a nice centralized location, but it can be a very busy traffic area. And I think that at this point, even some of the traffic, I think people who regularly frequent those areas are aware as well. Obviously, there's some other people who aren't aware of what's in the environment, but.
And just to add to, I would also say Paisanos is a favorite that often that our staff will use for meetings and celebrations. It's easy, it's close by. And, interesting that Elio mentioned the Willowdale bus. There's been a couple times in the past 30 years where the Willowdale bus, the 98 bus, has been up on the chopping block with the TTC. And both times we advocated very, very strongly with TTC to keep that bus route because it serves as a lifeline to our tenants that live in the Willowdale building there, as well as those that come to the training center. So we've been very fortunate that TTC has listened to us over the years. And, I think that it's a very important route that we all need to fight for if ever it's up on that block again.
If anything, I'd like to see increased service because some of our staff at NeighbourLink North York use the 98 to get to work. And, if you miss one,
you're waiting a while.
Yeah, it's quite a wait. So I would love to see a few more en route. But it is heartwarming for me to know that the community has been very supportive and to hear of these businesses that many of us frequent, to know that they are friendly and helpful, accommodating places. I thought it would be helpful for anyone watching today's live stream or hearing this podcast to learn the lexicon, because not everyone, we've talked about the role of the intervener, but not everyone would know, what is the difference between a consumer and a tenant. Well, obviously tenant are the people who live at Willowdale and Byng, but can you explain for everyone what is a consumer? Because maybe we've never heard the term used in this context before.
We in the sector, in the province, we refer to individuals who are deafblind and utilize support services as consumers. So consumers of our service. So I refer to the tenants. It's an old-fashioned bad Jennifer. I've been there for 26 years. We really should refer to all of our consumers as consumers. There is no difference. It's just that the tenants who live at the apartment building on Willowdale Avenue, I refer to them as the tenants because they're tenants of that building, but they are consumers, deafblind consumers.
So from a resource allocation perspective, how many hours of intervener support do most consumers and tenants are able to access or receive?
If I can respond, this is Elio.
Yep.
Yeah, for deafblind individuals who are using intervention services, just first of all, I want to speak to the fact that George Brown College has an intervener program. There are no colleges or universities, right, or other majors all across Canada. There is no other program that teaches people intervener. There's only this one that's in Toronto, so it is quite unique. Right down at King Street, so taking, I take the subway often to get there. So anybody who's thinking about perhaps that would be a location where one can learn. And so we obviously have lots of resources available to folks for that. So interpreting services also is something that people understand is the community facilitation of communication, and that would be all that interpreters do, but interveners work with them and they're trained at George Brown College to help do more than just the facilitation of communication. So we like to see that number of interveners continue to grow.
Mm-hmm. And how, I imagine that life is easier when there is an intervener around. How many hours a week does someone who's deafblind have access to an intervener?
Up to 24 hours a week. It depends on the individuals, but generally roughly around that. If they need something more than that, they can get some, but basically 24 hours.
And as Jennifer speaking, at the apartment building, all of the consumers who live there will access up to 24 hours a week of a one-to-one intervener, but we do have an on-duty intervener that's there 24 hours a day. And they're there to provide short bits of information, access to information. What's the weather today? Are these my brown socks or my blue socks? And, can you help me with the recipe or the directions on this box of mashed potatoes or something like that? There's somebody there, but they're also providing safety and security in the apartment building as well. So on top of those one-to-one interactions that the consumers can receive, they also have access to the on-duty intervener.
This is the first time that I have seen tactile ASL. I didn't even know that it existed, but I can see now how helpful it is for Elio and someone like him to be able to hear what I'm saying. Is this something new that was developed? Because I don't know, I never heard of it before.
Elio speaking. I guess ultimately it makes sense, right? We want to have all individuals have a sense of autonomy. And, philosophy is here, we need a good attitude, etc. For those who are sighted, they can use visual ASL, right? Because they have the vision to be able to do that. They don't generally touch each other. It's all done in a visual fashion. But as an individual who loses their vision, you start to lose some access to that. And if you are somebody who has no hearing or little amounts of hearing, you are going to miss any auditory information. And so when you can create this language using a tactile method, then it makes it accessible, right? So when you think about coins and you reach in your pocket for a bunch of coins, or your keys, and you pull out your keys from your pocket, you can feel, right? You can sense the difference between those two, right? Because it's a tactile experience. It doesn't rely on any kind of auditory information or visual information. It's strictly on a tactile basis. So we use that as our means to communicate, to make it more accessible.
And there's a couple other methods of communication. Elio is using tactile ASL. There's also what I would say is newer type of communication in the community is pro-tactile, and Elio can talk about that a little bit. But we also, all of our consumers have varying degrees of vision and hearing loss. So some might use voice. We may communicate in their better ear on their left side. They might have more difficulty hearing in louder environments or busy environments, or understanding people with accents and things like that. Others, we use a form of tactile communication called hand manual, and it's an alphabet. So you're spelling everything on touch points of the hand, which is another type of communication that we might use. Large print notes, braille. There's really various types of ways to communicate with a deafblind person. It really depends on that person's preferred methods and how they communicated growing up and those types of things. Elio, I don't know if you just wanted to talk briefly about pro-tactile. Explain what that is.
For sure. This is Elio speaking. Yes. So pro-tactile is done actually by using forehands. Maybe I'll ask my intervener to demonstrate on camera for me. So I'm going to talk about drinking from a cup. So if I say that in visual ASL, I literally am just using my hand to indicate the cup and pulling it up to my mouth. I'm going to now use Amy to help demonstrate in pro-tactile. So I'm tapping, she's holding onto my one hand. I tap that hand, and with my other hand, I indicate to her a hand shape that I want her to copy. She copies it, and then I can demonstrate that I'm pouring something in to that cup, and I can show her how much liquid is inside that cup. I can also describe if I'm mixing something into that cup as well. So it's done by holding on to all four hands. So we're using all four of our hands between the two of us. If you're doing spelling, an easy way that if you don't know how to use finger spelling, which is something that's done with ASL, then you can use print on palm. POP, it's said. So you can actually just take your fingertip and you can print on the other person's palm. You can, so CHKC, it can also do that on the shoulder area of somebody as well. So I'm demonstrating now the letters CHKC. Again, I'm asking Amy to be my model here, and I'm printing on her palm currently. So again, through the sense of touch, that information is conveyed, the letters are conveyed, and we are all able to communicate then in a form of writing, a tactile form of writing. So, because if you're using any other forms, sometimes it takes more work to learn those. Protactile is basically a way of communicating. Two individuals who are communicating with each other hold on to each other in order to provide information back and forth. So we hold on to each other's hands, and we can then communicate our information in a tactile way, depending on where our hands are and the handshakes that are being produced. So it takes some practice to become competent with it, but certainly something people can learn.
It feels like a very intimate form of communication, because especially with COVID and all this social distancing, you would not be able to practice these types of communication if you are not allowed to be close to each other. How did the pandemic affect the community?
I think that's Jennifer speaking, a very good question. That was something that we certainly struggled with in the very beginning, because as you can see, it would be impossible for Amy to social distance with Elio and provide him with communication and information. And so, we certainly had to find ways to manage not being able to social distance. We had a lot of work had to be done with our staff, with our consumers, with PPE and getting accessible PPE, again, like the masks. And, for some of our consumers, it was difficult because they also rely on reading some lips. And so certainly it was very challenging, very, very challenging. But one thing I will say is, again, in the beginning of the pandemic, people in the Willowdale communities were reaching out to us, and they were like, we can make masks, we can do this. Our local MPP, Stan Cho, showed up at our front door with 200 cloth masks and things like that. So, we certainly had to find our way. It was not easy, but we managed, and we kept everyone safe. I don't know if Elio wants to add anything to that, but was a challenging time for sure.
Yeah, this is Elio speaking. Yeah, the social distancing was what we call distancism. This word where you remain disconnected or distant from other individuals, and that was a huge challenge. For deafblind individuals, you need that experience. They need that access, that communication access. We all deserve that. So if, trying to think of something I wanted to show you, a real life example if I can. So you may recall that, growing up using the phone, right? We all had the corded phones, the rotary phones originally. Those all became cell phones at some point in the future. And now the latest technology has us doing video phone calls, right? Where we can actually use our sign language now. But for deafblind individuals, we still can't access those. We can't touch the person on the other end of the telephone or the video phone. When we approach someone, we need to be tactile. We need to touch them to let them know we're here. I guess the best I could do is move my camera, as I'm doing right now. I'm moving my camera in an up and down motion to kind of, when that sort of thing happens, it becomes very difficult to understand what's being said. So yes, this is a real challenge for deafblind individuals. The only technology that was available to us, I guess, was Braille. If you were able to read Braille, there are Braille displays. So some deafblind individuals were able to use that, and that offered them a sense of independence. In some cases, some were able to hear things a little bit or read things. And we also have Zoom text, for example, another technology that we can utilize, which enlarges the text on screen. So, technology has helped in many ways. But unfortunately, we still haven't really got the tactile piece done, except for live human beings being able to communicate together.
And one thing we say, deafblindness, one of the things that is a result of deafblindness is that our consumers face a lot of isolation, right? If you can't communicate with the outside world, or you can only communicate with the outside world using an intervener, it creates isolation. And what did they want us to do the whole time during the pandemic was to isolate and to, keep separate from people. And so one of the biggest issues for us, I think, was that we were isolating people who were already isolated. And, that in itself created a whole bunch of other issues for our consumers, for sure.
Well, I'm glad that things are opening up now. It brings tremendous hope to everyone, I think. What are some ways that you are fostering community now with the restrictions being lifted? And what does it mean, or what are some approaches to building community within a deafblind building?
Elio speaking. I think the Ministry of Community and Social Services, we're following the rules and regulations, and sometimes some things change there. But with COVID in particular, there are a number of, we needed interveners to make sure that we were safe and secure. So yes, folks had to use masks. And now we've gotten to a point where we no longer need to use the mask. So we're really still encouraging people to stay safe, do what they can. In many cases, many members of our community are still using masks because we want to make sure that we're safe. When they're on their own or with their families, obviously that's a point in time when they can take their mask off. But if they're familiar with the individuals that are around them, that's fine. But if they're in an environment where they're not sure who's around them, many of them are still choosing to stay masked. So I think that, just flex. I guess we're just being flexible now in the current situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at the Helen Keller Centre, certainly at the training center, which is the Empress and Willowdale location, it is we call it Helen's Hub, or it's the hub of the community. It's the heartbeat of the community, and we have consumers who live around the Toronto area. They might not even necessarily use CHKC as a service provider, but they come there to socialize and meet each other. And now with the pandemic kind of things opening up, trying to rebuild that and get people to come back to the center for activities and things like that. It's slow. It's slow because, I think everybody out there is still fearful. Not everybody, but some people. And so, getting things back to capacity and getting things really moving along again, in person things, we're working on. We know that our community needs it, but also like above that, like us being in the Willowdale community, you know, we always invite members to come, like certainly at the Empress property. If you see people in the backyard gardening and things like that, like stop, say hello. Building those relationships within Willowdale is really important for CHKC. If you ever want more information or you're interested in maybe coming for a tour or something like that, you can certainly contact us and we would make that possible. We are looking at next year potentially participating in the Open Doors or Doors Open Toronto, so that we can open up our doors to the neighborhood and other people in the city to see what we do, to come and visit our buildings. And I think, you know, like I said, anytime anybody's interested, give us a call, knock on the door, and we can certainly make some arrangements.
Are there any other things that Willowdalers could do to be better neighbors to all of you?
Is Elio speaking? I remember when I was young, right? And RTA, I think, was established in 1992. And I'm sorry, but his screen is just currently frozen. There we go. There were many people on a list. I think we have 16 units, and they're all full right now. We want to support everyone. A lot of people live just outside of Toronto or in outside neighborhoods. I think we have next year. We're anticipating it's a bit farther. It's Etobicoke, but we did manage to find a 56-unit apartment that we'll have for individuals. So obviously, costs have gone up for a lot of people, but hopefully we'll be able to have some people there in the new building, and we'll make the connection between individuals from both buildings to interact with each other moving forward. It may be a bit of a challenge, but I think, deafblind individuals can afford, can't always afford things. Obviously, sometimes they're on very limited incomes, depending on who they are. That can certainly be a barrier for them as they try to navigate the financial aspect of things.
Elio spilled the beans a little bit there, but we do have an exciting project up and coming in the City of Toronto in partnership with City of Toronto around affordable housing. So stay tuned for more information about that. That's all I'm going to tell you.
That's wonderful to hear. So we thank you for being here with us tonight. I think we learned so much, and I think you've given me courage next time to strike up a conversation and not just, give a polite greeting from a distance. We end every episode of Meet Your Neighbor with what we call the Willowdale Rapid Fire Round. And it's just simply a few simple questions about your experience of living in Willowdale. So the first question is, what is your favorite place to hang out in Willowdale?
I'm going to say Canadian Helen Keller Centre, the training center.
It sounds like a beautiful place. How about you, Elio?
Well, I guess my favorite place is, I think I often go to Finch subway station and to catch the bus there. And I know there's a hot dog vendor, and I'll grab that fast food on my way home. In addition, I think that on Yonge Street, can be a very busy street, and a lot of people often say things to me like, oh, you poor thing, you can't hear. Oh, I feel so bad for you. It's must be horrible. And I say, you know what? No, it's been great. I can sleep through anything, right? So if you live here, you're in a very busy traffic, very urban sort of area. I feel bad for you. You have to listen to all that.
That's wonderful. What is your favorite restaurant to eat at other than the hot dog stand?
I say paisanos.
Yeah, my favorite restaurant. I like it. Yeah, I would definitely say Paisano. I agree with Jennifer on that one.
They have wonderful homemade bread there. It's one
Yes.
of my favorites. Yeah. What do you think sets Willowdale apart from other neighborhoods?
Well, I think what sets Willowdale apart is the fact that it has this very unique organization. It has an apartment building where 16 deafblind people live in this city of Toronto, as well as a training center. So it has a very unique small community of individuals who are deafblind. And I think that's what makes Willowdale special.
And how about you, Elio?
Right. Wow. Okay. The mall, the Centerpoint Mall. Again, lots of options there for folks too. I think that's a pretty unique space. Down at Steeles and Young.
And this is the last question tonight. What is your most memorable Willowdale moment?
Oh my gosh. I'm going to say many, many years ago, our city councilor at the time, Norm Gardner, worked with us, and we had the accessible traffic signal installed at Byng and Willowdale Avenue. It was a pretty big deal. We had the media there because it was the first accessible traffic signal in the city that had both a audio and a tactile alerting system on it. Came from New Zealand. And so the city of Toronto installed the first one there at the corner of Byng and Willowdale Avenue. And now I think they're all over the city.
Wow. So we set a trend, an important resource across the city, and it all started here right on the corner of Byng and Willowdale. That's amazing. How about you, Elio? What is your most memorable Willowdale moment?
I think this is Elio speaking. I think for me, I used to live in Downsview, which is not too far from Willowdale. And I would go to the outdoor hockey rink. Right, that's I loved it there. It's a very friendly, great place to play hockey. Lots of chocolate there too, right? So that was a lot of friends. I'd be able to meet there regardless of hearing, non-deaf, whatever. So yeah, it was just nice. It was nice. And in the summertime, there was the outdoor swimming as well that I would access, which is also near there. And I also will never forget one time the subway. When all those renovations were being done. This was an incredibly challenging time during and the traffic. I know I was trying to get to work, and I had to be especially cautious because things would change from day to day as the construction that was happening. I'm so glad that we now have it all done. But yeah, that was quite a tumultuous time.
Memorable in not a great way, it sounds like. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us. I have learned so much, and I hope more people will also tune in to our podcast and also learn. And more importantly, I hope that there will be many future opportunities where we can build more bridges as neighbors. And that more people can make new friends with the very community that is so unique and special right here in Willowdale at Byng and Willowdale Avenue. So thank you, Elio. Thank you, Jennifer. Is there anything else, last words that you would like to say and share with our community?
Other than, please visit our website at www.chkc.org. Check out our Facebook group. We have lots of great events. June is Deafblind Awareness Month. So check out our website and our social media for events and activities that are going on. We have a bougie bingo scheduled for September 29th, which is a virtual or a hybrid event. It's a bingo event where you can win designer handbags and glam things like that. So we held the event last year and it was very successful. So if you want to buy tickets, you can check out our website, and for any other activities and goings on at Canadian Helen Keller Centre.
And, Elio, I want to say that certainly I didn't know how beautiful life can be, that you are married, you have children, you have several careers on the go. This has really broken, in my mind, any stereotypes or thoughts that I may have had that of the restrictions that one might have to deal with to be deaf and blind. So thank you for, setting such a beautiful example for all of us to know that you can live such a full life as someone who is deaf and blind. Do you have any closing words that you would like to share with our community?
This is Elio speaking. Just giving some thought to that. I guess Deafblind Awareness Month is something, and we want people to become more and more aware of deafblind individuals. So yes, being able to meet people, meet them on the subway or in the malls. Hopefully, I think what's important is to maintain a positive attitude. Right? Just know that we can do anything. Right? But making connections is important. So don't keep your distance. Right? Just enjoy life and come meet us.
Thank you. Thank you, Elio. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Monique. And thank you, Amy. It's been a very special time. I have to admit, I was a little nervous today. I wasn't really sure, could I figure this all out? But you have been very gracious and patient with me. And so I look forward to seeing you on Willowdale Avenue sometime in the not so distant future.
Absolutely. Come and visit us.
For sure. And that wraps up an episode of Meet Your Neighbor. We will be back next week, same time, with a new neighbor. So have a great Monday night and have a great rest of your week, Willowdale.